Hi everyone, good morning if you're on the West Coast and good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. Welcome to today's webinar, When Loyal Meets Social, Online and in Store. My name is Giovanna Zanilato and I am a Marketing Associate here at Social Annex. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few things so you know what to expect and how to participate in today's event. In today's webinar, you will learn about Omni-Channel Loyalty programs and the impact of adding social actions to a loyalty program. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to us by typing that into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect this and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. We are also going to record the webinar, so if you want to rewatch it later or share it with your peers, you will be able to find the recording on our YouTube channel as well as on our Facebook page, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Now, I would like to introduce you to Al Lalani, the Chief Strategist here at Social Annex. He will be the presenter in today's session.
Awesome. Thank you, Giovanna. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. And it's a great day here in Los Angeles. Finally got the sun out, and we've got some chilly weather, but not as chilly as everyone else that might be on the East Coast there. So hello, nice to meet everyone. I thought I'd start with a quick introduction about myself so you can get to know me a little bit more. Some of this may or may not be as relevant to this presentation. But, you know, I always start sort of the presentation with talking about my two wonderful daughters. So that's kind of what I'm proud of. I'm the father of two wonderful daughters, 7 and 2. I do speak 5 languages, not that it has any relevance to this presentation. I will continue in English, I promise. And, you know, extra caffeine has a reverse effect on me. It actually puts me to sleep, which is very interesting and weird. So hopefully you are all caffeinated enough to be part of this presentation, and thank you for joining again. A little background about me. I've started my career on the technology side as a programmer into, you know, dealing with servers and code and that sort of it. Moved on to kind of product where I was responsible for building sort of SaaS product for a pretty large sort of organization. And then moved on to running e-commerce for a company called Teleflora, which is about a $300 million e-commerce business across multiple properties, which led me to the idea of Social Annex. And so it's been a pretty great journey for me from all the way on the other side, I call it the dark side of programming, to, I guess, the more fun side of marketing and everything in between. And along the way during my time at Teleflora, and I'll tell you a little bit more of a story in the next few slides, became really, really passionate about retaining customers and customer loyalty. And the idea of kind of building brand advocates and using those most loyal customers, you know, within sort of the brand experience, enrich not only their experience, but hopefully get their help to grow businesses at a large scale, if you will. So that's a little bit of an introduction about me. But before we jump into the details of the webinar today, you know, quick shameless plug about Social Annex so you have some context about what we do. You know, so we are a customer loyalty and customer advocacy platform. And you'll see some examples around that in our slides and how we work with customers. But the goal here is we work with retailers and manufacturers to specifically focus on building customer loyalty, enriching lifetime value, increasing that brand experience, and then kind of cultivating the most loyal customers into advocates and helping those advocates hopefully spread the word for you, thereby generating more acquisition and conversion revenue. So we've got a customer loyalty engine. We've got essentially an advocacy engine that has multiple pieces around user-generated content, you know, visual commerce, sharing, referrals, contests, and many other pieces of the product. With that shameless plug out of the way, let's jump right in. You know, you know, this is a quote that really struck to me, and in my earlier career, I was a big fan of Tony Robbins, and hopefully some of you were as well. And you know, the key piece in any part of a relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, and I've been happily married for over 10 years, or a brand relationship, you know, the quality of that relationship, or quality of life is defined by quality of our relationships around us. And when it comes to specifically people, there are two aspects that matter, whether it's a relationship with your family, whether it's a relationship with your peers at work, whether it's a relationship with anyone that you're associated with. There's a constant need to communicate and ensure that we're communicating with the people we're working with, but also making sure that they feel appreciated and valued. So the quality of that relationship determines how much the association remains and how well the association remains. And then there's a commitment to ensuring that that quality is maintained over time. So ensuring that we constantly communicate and keep in touch with each other, and there's a commitment to keep improving that, or at least keeping it at par, if you will. So a lot of us do that really well in our personal lives, but when it comes to kind of in our work lives, especially when we're working in a brand, especially when you're working in a B2C organization, when you've got millions of customers to work with, that becomes a huge challenge. Maintaining the quality where a customer can say essentially what this screen says, that this brand communicates with me. It treats me as a valued customer and appreciates me. If we all went out to our, let's say, 1 million customers and said, hey, can you please, how many of your customers would actually say this about you? I'm guessing most of the people will say that we don't know this. We don't know how many people will actually say these words about us. So that quality, when it's extrapolated to millions of customers, becomes challenging to maintain. Commitment, on the same side of communicating, effectively, sometimes works against your laws of generating more revenue. An example of that is during the holidays, we all feel the urge to send out that one extra email that has a special promotion that will generate another 1,000 orders and sort of bring us closer to our goal. But yet at the same time, thinking about whether we're committed to communicating with our customers the same consistent way, sometimes it works, these ideas work against each other. And so our goal is to kind of then increase that and improve that in a large scale by both maintaining quality and improving the commitment there. Now, in the old days, when we all had our friendly shopkeepers, those qualities of communication, of commitment, of appreciation were extremely well maintained. But we're living in a world that's very different than that now, where there's constant pressure to our consumers based on price, based on promotions, based on too many options, essentially, that now goes against maintaining brand loyalty. So that, I think we all understand that's a huge problem. And what happened in the world a few years ago is many companies tried to solve that by introducing kind of traditional loyalty programs. And these traditional loyalty programs, I'm sure we are all a part of some airline loyalty program that have been around for a while. And for all reasons and purposes, they worked well during the age we were in at the time to improve loyalty, where you would have repeat purchases or multiple purchases being rewarded from a consumer perspective. But if you go back to your original thought that we started off with, where we want to have both the quality of the relationship and the commitment to the relationship, you will notice that a traditional airlines loyalty program, or any traditional purchase-based loyalty program for that matter, has the commitment aspect where we are committed to providing some sort of a reward every time a customer buys from us. But it lacks the quality of the relationship, of communicating with that customer during the entire life cycle of them working with us. So from the time of the first purchase to the second purchase, the only communication they possibly get from us is saying, hey, you've got some points, please come back and buy more and use your points and so on. But there's almost no communication from a loyalty perspective before they made the first purchase. And there lacks a quality of communication between two purchases, if you will, from that perspective. So traditional loyalty programs kind of provide that part of commitment, but do not provide the part of quality. So how can we bring that quality to the relationship within the brand? And especially do this at a massive scale when you have 100,000 people buying from you a year, or 1 million people buying from you a year in our case at Telfor, or more than that. How can you do that at a massive scale? And so what we did at the time, kind of giving you an anecdotal story, is we were kind of at Telfor trying to really figure out how we can increase our retention aspect. So we went out and we kind of recruited 1,000 of our best, most loyal customers, as we thought were, and we defined certain things that we wanted to do with those 1,000 people, essentially, that we could sort of see how that would impact our work with them, or how that would impact the bottom line from a revenue perspective, and how that would impact our relationship with them, if you will. And so we started connecting with them. We started to reach out one-on-one with some of them, or actually with most of them, essentially, and reaching out and actually starting to excite them about our brand, giving them something a little bit more special than everyone else would have gotten. And that was not always promotions. We did things like giving them access to bouquets before everyone would get access to those bouquets. We would give them access to sort of special perks or free delivery. We would give them access to the ability to give us ideas about what they liked about our products ahead of time during the design phase. We would bring them into our offices to actually help curate some of the designs during our picking phase and picking the right products that we were going to promote. So we started exciting them in this process by communicating these different pieces, and along the way started engaging them in the entire grassroots process of building the brand, if you will. And along the way, as they were doing these things, we started to reward them for their behavior. So we would send them the free bouquet. As we released those, we would send them those products ahead of time, and so on. And to sort of start, essentially interacting with them, not just during the initial phase, but essentially fostering a long-term relationship with them. So we did that very, very effectively with 1,000 people, and we established these kind of keywords or adjectives that we wanted to kind of communicate when work with our customers in doing so. And we realized that as much as we started working with them, with these people, it was clear to us that we had to communicate with them not just between purchases, but communicate with them on all parts of their life cycle with our brand. So some examples I gave you, whether it be their involvement early on in defining the product, whether it be their involvement in helping us curate it, whether it be their involvement in us spreading the message, whether it be their involvement in working with us during the sort of the life cycle of the product, if you will. It was very important to communicate with them before and between purchases effectively. And so when we did that for a few people, we started thinking about what are the different aspects that we can do when we essentially start, communicating or connecting with our customers. What are the different things that we can do? What are the different touch points that these customers or prospects have with our brand? Connect with them on. And so these were some of the library of things that we created essentially, that helped us understand the different touch points that they had with our brand, that we could A, communicate with them on, and B, reward them on, so that we could have more touch points with them beyond the purchase. So on the online side, definitely the purchase is one thing that everyone rewards, but whether they come in and create an account so that we have the ability to communicate with them was a behavior that we wanted to recognize. Whether they sign up for our newsletters, which is a very important aspect of our business, whether we could recognize that. In between their purchases, whether they wrote a review for us or shared some content for us, that was a very important aspect. Whether they help other customers, discover things or get answers to things that they could answer effectively, especially because they were great customers of ours, that was a behavior that was important to us to recognize as well. And then along the way, we realized that social was becoming this big, massive thing, and was a way that brands communicate with their customers. So we started rewarding essentially, or recognizing social behaviors, whether it's kind of following us on Twitter or liking us on Facebook, or pinning us on Pinterest, or connecting with us on some other social network, or even kind of social actions of sharing and tweeting and so on, by spreading the word, were behaviors that we started tracking and recognizing, not necessarily rewarding, but at least tracking and recognizing and understanding where they were connecting with us. But we definitely started rewarding behavior where people would actually spread the word, and it would result in a purchase for us or a new customer for us, if you will. More traditionally now known as refer a friend, if you will. So those are activities that are important, kind of beyond the purchase, if you will. And then certain customized activity that were special for our business, and this might be very different for different businesses, but for us, customers' birthdays were an important activity because gifting is a big thing on birthdays. So recognizing their birthday would be an important part. Whether they checked into our store or just kind of came into our stores and participated on our activities that would happen in our store, that was a behavior that we started recognizing. Whether they were first-time purchasers or they bought from us X number of times, that's kind of segmenting those behaviors that was important. Personalized actions based on their interest. We started understanding what these people were from their social profiles. Started sort of adding some of those elements of what we know about them, and personalizing specific rewards around that behavior, if you will, from that perspective. And then a very, very important part, which we call surprise and delight, where you can essentially do something for your valued customers before they know about it or before you telling them about it. So it's a surprise element that kind of makes them really feel valued and appreciated. Imagine, if you're married or if you're with that special someone, and you actually give them a gift that they weren't expecting. Imagine the smile that brings to their face, and imagine how you can do that for your customers, at a more massive scale, and surprising them with something that they normally wouldn't have gotten. And so those were essentially activities and behaviors that we started, A, doing, B, tracking, 3, recognizing, and 4, starting to think about rewarding those behaviors, if you will, from that perspective. And so as sort of Social Annex came about, we started implementing some of those pieces in a more mechanical fashion, starting to extrapolate that over sort of thousands and hundreds of thousands of customers. So this is an example of Olympus that's kind of doing this in a real-life context. So if you go to getolympus.com and you look at their customer loyalty program, it definitely goes well beyond the purchase. It rewards people for the behaviors or some of the behaviors that we talked about, whether it be custom behaviors like birthdays, or on-site behaviors like creating accounts or signing up to an email list, or social behaviors like referrals and social sharing and following, if you will. And that expanded into very custom behaviors that could be rewarded on an ongoing basis. So this is an example of something that's very important for Olympus. Olympus sells cameras, and cameras is a big sort of product for them. And so fostering people that are interested in photography and giving them an avenue to spread the word and share their photography with the world. Olympus created a visual commerce gallery where user-generated content from pictures that people took from Olympus cameras all around the world could be shared in a gallery. And that was another activity that was recognized through their loyalty program, essentially as a new activity here, essentially, that you can see, where at the bottom you'll see they started rewarding people to start submitting that content and creating a community around their galleries, if you will, from that perspective. And then kind of another example of a customer that kind of specifically focuses on on retail per se. Olympus is more of a brand, a manufacturer, if you will. This is a pure play retail customer that also expanded well beyond the purchase, but focused very, very heavily on sharing and social focused rewards. So beyond the purchases, whether it be referrals from shares on Facebook or Twitter or email, was an action that was rewarded, and through their site started promoting those actions and allowing people to easily spread the word and get additional rewards beyond the purchase by spreading the word for them, if you will. So this is an example of social, sort of activity-based rewards, if you will. And then within the site itself, people started rewarding specific behavior. So we talked about writing reviews and communicating that aspect. and making people feel kind of getting some value for doing something for you in this case. Now, mind you, we're not rewarding people for writing positive reviews. We're not rewarding people for sharing positive comments. We're rewarding people for actually participating and doing something, whether it's negative or positive or whatever their experience was at the time. Kind of sharing that experience is what's important, not sharing the right thing that's for the business, if you will. And that part is very important from a authenticity perspective to ensure that you're doing the right thing for the brand, if you will. But then kind of rewarding that behavior, whether it be specifically, writing reviews or helping answer questions, as I mentioned in my previous example, has become very prevalent in customer loyalty programs. And then adding a more omni-channel touch to it, this company specifically adds beyond, the purchase behaviors and the social behaviors, adds some more offline behaviors, whether you come into a store of theirs and check in, whether you kind of enter giveaways and contests that they do, whether it's online or in store. Rewarding those behaviors offline is another sort of aspect as an example of what I mentioned before, if you will. So kind of adding some of what we call social commerce actions was what I mentioned before, whether it be kind of visual galleries in the case of Olympus, whether it be sharing in the case of perhaps Footwear, whether it be ratings and reviews or content in the case of Chaparral, were just examples in how customer loyalty programs were strengthened by communicating with those customers beyond the purchase, at touch points between those purchases, at touch points before that first purchase, at touch points between multiple purchases, if you will, from that perspective. So we've talked about expanding that customer loyalty program into kind of adding and rewarding and recognizing behaviors beyond the purchase. The next aspect of what we did at Teleflora, kind of going back to my original story, is out of those 1,000 customers, we recognized some customers were not just good at participating with our brand, they were also very good at becoming advocates of our brand. So they would normally just go out and kind of say how great and really happy they were with our product and how happy they were with the experience we were providing them, within that list of people, and they were doing that very, very organically. And so out of that came a grassroots brand advocacy program where we said, hey, you guys are going to be our brand advocates. You're going to go tell people about us, and we're going to start rewarding those behaviors, if you will, from that perspective. And we started looking at brand advocacy as actually a P&L tactic, where we could say, how much ROI can I produce by true brand advocacy? If I was able to recruit 100 advocates, how much revenue would they generate for us? And now can I extrapolate that to 1,000 advocates and 10,000 advocates and so on, and how I can increase sort of that advocacy piece. And so we started measuring the business impact of true advocacy from a real revenue perspective, not just from a broad advocacy perspective, but from a true real perspective of increasing, average order value or repeat purchases or social activity or referrals or sharing or content, and how this would generate real revenue from that perspective. And we actually started having P&L as well as KPIs that would help us measure the increase in revenue through real brand advocacy. And brand advocacy came out as a subset of loyalty, where we took, as I mentioned before, 100 of our top customers within those 1,000 that we had loyalists that we were doing grassroots advocacy for. And so just some sidebar study. I mean, advocates, people trust recommendations from friends. It's a well-known fact that people don't trust brands. If you tell people about something as a brand, they're less likely to trust what you have to say than if a trusted member that they knew, a friend or an associate or people they work with or what have you, there's going to be more trust from that, essentially. And so, cultivating brand advocacy on top of loyalty is a very important aspect of extending your loyalty program beyond just purchases as well. And as we started tracking that, we started seeing specific P&L metrics around real revenue attributable to loyalty as well as advocacy, whether it be around real metrics. So again, the urge is to track not just the participation. The urge is to track real revenue in terms of the metrics that we track on a day-to-day basis, as retailers and brand manufacturers, if you will. Now, one of the things that's very important beyond sort of the traditional aspect is to ensure now that all the channels that consumers interact with us on are measured as well as interacted on. So some of the things that we talked about before were focused on two specific channels, which were online or on-site and social. But there are other sort of channels that now have come into play. In-store has been a channel forever, and we've always had stores, but extending that brand loyalty and advocacy program within stores, an example of which I gave you with Spa Week, where they were allowing people to check into the store and reward that behavior, you know, is just an example, but rewarding that behavior in store was very important. And with the advent of mobile, you know, which the last number I heard was 44% of purchases during Black Friday were on a mobile device. Astounding, and we wouldn't have thought that would be the case, you know, a year ago. There was a lot of traffic. Now there's a lot of purchases, and the conversions actually happening on mobile. So it's important that mobile becomes an important channel within our brand loyalty and advocacy program. So whether the actions are done on a website or on a mobile device or within an app or in a store, on our social or through email, a holistic experience across all channels that the consumers communicate with you on and interact with you on is highly, highly important. So let's dive a little deeper into the in-store component of the loyalty program, so we can kind of you know, talk about how we can enrich experiences and sort of drive more loyalty and advocacy within stores. So within a store program, you know, doing this for a while, essentially, we realized there are a few different aspects that are very important when you launch a customer loyalty program within an omni-channel experience, especially within stores, if you will. The first aspect is to really define a clear plan around program recruitment and promotion. You know, a lot of people essentially hope that it's going to work and essentially launch a program in store and create points for purchases and great. And so without having a true promotional strategy around recruitment in store, you know, it doesn't really work. So defining an in-store awareness and recruitment program, and I'll show you in the next few slides how that's done on a broader perspective, is very important. And then using online and social behaviors to then recruit people, whether it be existing customers or new customers, to drive that in-store recruitment is also a very important part. Then defining how people will actually start using the program, how they will sign up to a program, whether it's, you know, that everyone who makes a purchase or does any action that we want to reward becomes part of the program automatically, or is it an explicit opt-in type of experience? You know, the sign-up process has to be clearly defined and documented. Then it's important to, as the program is rolled out, that there's proper planning around it, especially when you have stores and you have store associates. There's training involved. There's, you know, there's planning involved in that aspect of training the trainers as well as training the associates. And potentially thinking about doing a trial, especially if you have more than, you know, 25 stores. We recommend doing a trial program and launching this selectively in 5 to 10 stores, and then expanding that into a more broader program is highly recommended. So finding a pilot program in stores for up to a 3-month period, if you will, is an important aspect of rolling out the program. Ensuring that there's a component of customer service that's accounted for in this case is highly important as well. You know, we've seen that once you have a strong program and a strong communication aspect around it, and a strong rollout plan and a training plan, that customer service does not get bombarded with issues. But when they do get questions, creating those FAQs around what they can answer and what they should answer for certain things is highly important. So bringing the customer service team in this play is important as well. And then really defining what the strategy around the accruals is going to be. You know, what are the actions we want to reward, you know, and how people are going to accrue points, when they're going to get to that reward. What are the different channels that they can get accruals from? How can they redeem that? What is your expiration strategy? There's a lot of nitty-gritty points around accruals and redemptions that have to be paid attention to when defining a strong omni-channel loyalty program. Now, one of the things that we strongly believe, by the way, is that you shouldn't add actions that you want to reward for sake of adding an action. So just because someone else is rewarding social behavior of sharing and referrals, or someone else is rewarding checking into a store through Foursquare, you don't have to do that specific behavior. So what's important in this baselining period that we talk about is understanding the true ROI from each of the actions from that behavior. So if someone's sharing, is that resulting in a referral purchase? And what's the outcome from that? And how can we then take it back and allot it towards sort of the strategy that we give towards the reward is highly important. And contrary to popular belief, each action can be taught that way, where you can take it down to the root and figure out what the ROI of that action is going to be. So it's highly important having a strategy around defining each action, defining the usage of that action, defining the tracking of how those actions will be tracked, as well as defining the ROI from people doing that action, and then going back to how we can reward that action is highly important. So let's go back and dive deeper into each of the aspects we talked about. When we talk about program awareness and recruitment, there are two aspects that we look at. One is new customer recruitment. So when people walk into a store, how are we going to make them aware of the program and recruit them into the loyalty program? And then there's existing customer recruitment, where you can now have your existing customers that may have visited you in the past, whether it be in store or online, essentially, and how we can then go back and run a drip program to go recruit them through email marketing, through social channels, go back and recruit them into your program so they're aware of it and they can be part of it and potentially be rewarded for that is highly important. Without diving into details and giving you an example of an existing customer recruitment drip campaign, segmenting your existing customer base and then creating a list of your different segments and taking your top customers, for example, your top 10,000 customers that have bought over $1,000 from you in the last 1 year is a segment, for example. Segmenting those people and then creating special recruitment drip campaigns by telling them, that the program's alive, by potentially giving them a sign-up bonus, like a 50 points if you start now type of bonus, whether it be giving them some points, especially for your top customers, to get them started for their past behavior. And running those existing customer recruitment campaigns, we've seen that we've been able to recruit upwards of 30% of past purchasers over the last year into the program within the first 60 days of launching the program. So that's kind of an example of recruiting. So when it comes to new customer recruitment, when they walk into a store, there are many ways of kind of making customers aware of the program as it exists, whether it be hanging ceiling signage, whether it be rewards cards, whether it be printing QR codes on the product itself, whether it be tabletop signs, floor signage, window signage. So there's many different parts of the store that can be made to life by promoting the program. And defining and designing the store experience for the loyalty program is a very, very important part of launching a real good omni-channel loyalty program. So here's an example of Chaparral, which we took before, where they're promoting that within the store at different locations, presenting the program, the benefit of the program, how people can be part of the program is an important part. And once you've defined the display of showing people how they can be part of the program, it's important that we have specific in-store recruitment strategies. Whether it be a store associate telling customers upon store entry about the program, whether it be in-store announcements around the program, whether it be signing customers in the aisles as they're standing if you have longer lines, whether it be signing customers at checkout, whether it be having digital displays. You've probably seen iPads in front of kiosks where people can sign up and be part of the loyalty program as well. So having a proper in-store recruitment strategy beyond the signage, allowing consumers to be part of the program, is another important part of the program. And then we talked about this already, is sending out drip campaigns to existing customers by segmentation of those customers and reaching out to them through email drips and mobile drips and SMS drips if you have contact information for those customers, or your website or your app, again, is an important part of the existing customer recruitment process. And then defining the redemption of that piece. Most specific retailers will define redemption as through their own coupons or through their own gift cards if you have gift cards. But there could be online redemption, and there could potentially be third-party redemption where they can redeem it into, other aspects like airline miles, or redeem them into a third-party associated gift card of a partner of yours potentially is an option there. One thing that we strongly advise, people to do is ensuring that this redemption is consistent across all channels. So if you can redeem that in store, you can redeem that online, you can redeem that in an app, and you can redeem that in your mobile device all through the same way, if you will, from that perspective. One part kind of specifically mentioning around manufacturers, right? So in the manufacturer play, the world is a little different. You don't have your own stores. And so how can you as a manufacturer, promote brand loyalty when your stores are not your own, advocate stores? And so now in the new world with apps abundant, there's the ability that exists where you can have a special app that your consumers can download that when they walk into a store can be used at point of sale specifically to get points on sale even though it's not your own store. So this is done by recognizing QR codes. So on your products, if you've got your products, you can have either a QR code or a barcode or a special code or a link that they can go to. And in this case specifically, there's a QR code, an app that they can scan into that automatically links their purchase that they bought within a retailer store into your manufacturer brand loyalty program, if you will, thereby allowing that offline channel to be part of the online sort of experience is also an important part of this part. And then once we have all the pieces in place, the important part is to now start tracking and ensuring that it's going in the right direction. And so there are many pieces of the program that you can track. And so let's go over some of these pieces that we call the dashboard pieces, which means these are all the important pieces that you as a loyalty program manager should be tracking. The first part is tracking actions that are happening. So when we start thinking of actions beyond the purchase, whether it be in this example that you see on the screen, creating accounts or newsletter signups or social behaviors or writing reviews, let's start tracking actions that people are performing. Let's start tracking actions that people are not performing or not, incented by. And by looking at that behavior, you'll know whether those actions are not popular, whether you need to keep them or remove them, or whether the rewards for those actions aren't engaging enough that people aren't actually doing it. And so by testing these actions and the rewards around those actions and the promotion strategy and the display strategy around how people discover those actions, there's a way to A/B test and improve that and sort of improve behavior around that. The next part to track is tracking enrollment around the program. We recommend that most programs, especially if you have 100,000 customers or more in a year, are done as explicit programs. And so explicit programs on your, essentially are programs where people have to come in and sign up and say, I am part of this loyalty program before they can start earning rewards. And the reason behind that is it shows some commitment behind the customer that wants to be part of that loyalty program and wants to engage with you in some aspect. Obviously, there has to be a way to communicate and get them recruited, as we discussed before, but explicit programs are great for people that have over 100,000 customers or more in an annual perspective that you're working with. And so tracking how many members you have in the program, tracking how that enrollment growth rate is improving, tracking how many people are participating in the program. So you might have 100,000 members or 132,000 members in this case, but how many people are active and participating in this case? So in our case, in this specific case, participation is they have done something that qualifies them for a reward or qualifies them for points or qualifies them for recognition within the last 60 days. So if they've participated in the last 60 days, they're participating. So 36% of your members, or in this case, this members here, are active participants in the last 60 days, and improving that is an important KPI that every loyalty program should have. And then sort of tracking specific program metrics, right? If your program is a points-based program, and it doesn't have to be, by the way, there's many different types of loyalty programs out there that can be launched, but if your program is a points-based program, then tracking how many points have been, rewarded, how many have been redeemed, how many have expired, what's the redemption rate, what's the expiration rate, what's the average points per member. These are some of the KPIs that you want to track around the program, if you will, from that perspective. So tracking the actions, tracking the enrollment and engagement, tracking the specific metrics around the program, and then tracking the interactions around the program, emails, SMS, and these are all interactions that the program has where, when the program does launch, we'll be sending out triggered emails reminding people of new actions that can be rewarded for, or reminding them of using their points or expiration of points and so on. Reminding them of transactional emails when they earn points, if you will. So tracking those interactions of how many were sent out, how many were open, how many were interacted with is another aspect of the program. And lastly, the most important part is revenue. At the end of the day, we're trying to show that your average order value is going up for these people and participants, that your lifetime value is going up, that your conversion is going up, that your repeat customers are increasing. And so that is your true KPI for the loyalty program. And so tracking the loyalty program revenue, tracking the AOV for members, tracking the repeat purchases and the improvement in repeat purchases over time, tracking the lift in AOV over time, tracking the conversion for those members, if you will, are all KPIs essentially that are very important for the success of the program. This is what I'm sure that you will be judged upon for success of the program as well. So we've talked a lot in this webinar as a quick recap. We talked about connecting with customers with quality and not just connecting them with the sake of connecting to them just for the purchase. So defining the different actions that communicate that your customers are connected with your brand and rewarding them and recognizing those actions is the first part of what we talked about. The second part of what we talked about was focused on considering all channels. We started off with social behaviors, and then we ended up in mobile, in-store, offline, email behaviors, all channels essentially communicating a true omni-channel aspect of the program. We talked about taking your best customer base and not just treating them as loyalists, but converting them into advocates of your brand, and how we can cultivate true brand advocacy as well as that impact of that brand advocacy on ROI. And then lastly, track everything. Track purchases, track participation, track actions, track rewards, but most importantly, track the real ROI from the program in terms of the real KPIs that matter in terms of repeat customer rate. And then optimize is the key aspect. So the quality of the relationships is the quality of your brand. Let's start communicating with those customers beyond just the purchase. And that wraps up our webinar for today. We are now opening up to questions. Giovanna, do we have any questions from the audience?
Thank you, Al. It looks like as of now we have 3 questions. So the first question is, what is the typical amount of time required to implement a successful omni-channel loyalty program?
We didn't talk about time specifically. That's a very interesting question. The time involvement essentially in running a loyalty program, we typically sort of say depending on whether it's online or offline, so I'm going to qualify my answer because the question didn't have specific qualifications. If it's an online only loyalty program, then the typical time in actually launching and running the program is about 3 to 4 months. If it's an omni-channel loyalty program, then there are many steps involved in that process, including running a pilot with potential some stores and then expanding that to multiple online, including training as well as launching across all different channels. So that typical process is about 6 months or so in the pilot phase and then moving forward to the program. So depending on whether it's online only or omni-channel, it might go from 3 to 6 months from concept to launch and tracking and optimization, essentially, if you will.
Thank you, Al. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the questions pane, and we will answer. The second question is, what are the resources needed to maintain a loyalty program?
Again, a very, very broad question, a very important one at that. In the success of loyalty programs, I mean, there's usually the CRM and loyalty team that is responsible for retention, or it might be the marketing team that's responsible for retention that is responsible for it. But because the loyalty programs and advocacy programs touch many different aspects of your brand, there are many teams that come into play, some of which we talked about before. So if it's in-store, the in-store enablement team comes into play. The in-store design team comes into play. The marketing team definitely comes into play, whether it's in-store or online. The analytics team essentially is able to track and report on some of these KPIs as well. The customer service team comes into play as well. And so what we'll try to do is, as a follow-up, we'll try to share a white paper around this that focuses primarily on the resource alignment of loyalty and advocacy programs that we can talk about. So that goes much deeper into all the different teams that are involved in this process, as well as how much involvement and time is spent on that side. Now, a lot of this can be productized, so it's not that they're involved on a long-term basis. It's just that they're aware of it and they have a couple of tasks that they're helping sort of do with those programs. So we'll share that white paper as a follow-up, definitely to the person that asked the question, but also to the rest of the group.
So the third question is, you recommend adding social and other actions to a loyalty program. How do you know they will be ROI positive and won't give margin away?
I think we talked about that a little bit. We didn't go deeper into it. What's involved in specifically social actions, social actions have for a long time been treated as vanity actions. And what I mean by that is, for a long time people have been talking about, vanity metrics, like how many likes do I have, or how many tweets did I get, or how many followers do I have, or that sort of it. And we call them vanity metrics because they almost mean nothing. I mean, if you have 1 million people or 100,000 people, what really matters is how many of those people are engaged and what revenue and ROI can be driven from those engaged audiences, if you will. And so what's involved in the social actions process is not looking at how many people you have in your social following, but seeing how that impacts on ROI. So what we do is we introduce tracking elements for these people. So all the people that like you or share you, that sort of it, we track them into analytics packages or Omni-Channel or Google Analytics or that sort of it, where we can track their behavior down to the revenue perspective. And using our algorithms, we tell you this is sort of the real revenue from these specific actions. So then we can go back and tabulate what those actions can be rewarded for. For example, if a Facebook share results in X number of people coming back to the site and Y number of those people then making a purchase, resulting in Z amount of revenue, then you can then track it back all the way and say each Facebook share is worth X dollars if we can track the entire cycle that way, end to end, and then be able to say this is what I can reward this specific action for, if you will, from that perspective. So that's kind of how we go through the baselining process of tracking it down to the revenue and then going back and allocating the reward spend based on that revenue, if you will. So it's a truly ROI-focused strategy, definitely not focused on vanity metrics at all.
All right, thanks, Al. Well, if there are no more questions, I think this is it. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact us at info@socialannex.com or visit our website. On behalf of the Social Annex team, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.